I was pretty excited when I found out that there were ghost towns dotted around the state of New Jersey. I've always been fascinated with urban exploration and stuff like that, so one day we hit the road to check some of them out. While I've been here, I've heard the stories of the Jersey Devil and how it prowls the Pine Barrens, and how one ghost town, Ong's Hat, is the site of an experiment where a bunch of scientists supposedly opened a portal to a parallel dimension. But we weren't going there on this day, because there was another story that caught my attention. In 1766, the settlement of Batstow Village was established. It was a modest town made up of people wanting to put down roots and be left alone. It was located close to Batstow Lake, so the inhabitants had water not just for washing and cooking, but for their crafting too. Ironworkers, glassmakers, miners. This community didn't need to depend on outsiders. They had each other. You could lean on your neighbours for any assistance you needed. It was a prosperous and peaceful little village, and it would continue like this for another 100 years. In 1832, the village of Allaire was founded. Just like Batstow Village, it was a community of hard-working folks. However, the people of Allaire had come from the built-up areas further north, and they had a clear sight on their ambitions. They had seen the cities of New York and Philadelphia rise up to become the true results of mankind's hard work, and they wanted Allaire to be next. Try as they might though, while they lived comfortably, they were never able to elevate themselves beyond a small settlement. Trading was limited, and for a town so remote, there wasn't much they could offer to set themselves apart. In 1852, 30 years after Allaire Village was founded, and 86 years after Batstow Village was first established, work on the Camden Atlantic Railroad began. It was advertised as a quick getaway for all the city folks. Quote, "Philadelphia is a hot, humid, and uncomfortable city during the summer months. Only 60 miles away on the Jersey coast, cool sea breezes blow night and day, and fine sand beaches invite the bather." End quote. For the people of Allaire Village, this was what they were waiting for. They wanted to be a stop on that railroad. This would put their village on the map. This would give their little economy the boost it needed. To their delight, the state wanted their help building it, so it made sense for the place to be one of the stops on the way to the Atlantic coast. The problem, though, was if that was going to be the route the railroad would take, then Batstow Village would have to be on board as well. And they were not. The people of Batstow were not interested in growing into a city. They weren't interested in what the outside world had to offer them. Representatives from the Camden Atlantic Railroad visited to try and convince them, evangelizing the benefits of the railroad. It can bring tourism and money. It can connect you with far-off places. These words did not impress the people of Batstow, and they did not budge. With their opportunity to grow slowly diminishing, community members from Allaire Village visited Batstow to try and convince them too. To begin with, Batstow leadership was apologetic to Allaire for the difficulties they had inadvertently caused them, but tempers flared, arguments got heated, and all this resulted in were drunken brawls. Allaire realised then that there was no convincing the narrow-minded fools of this older generation. Days and weeks passed, and a lingering resentment between the settlements began to fester. Despite these complications, the community of Allaire still did all they could to be a part of the railroad project, creating a simple train yard that would serve as the new centre of the village. They also took it upon themselves to create a new route for the railroad that diverted away from Batstow, but would still include Allaire. To achieve this, they used gunpowder and charges to clear massive swaths of land. These were hard-working people, and they were hell-bent on not letting Batstow stand in the way of their success. But in 1866, due to an accidental chain reaction, these gunpowder explosions caused an uncontrolled landslide, and the vast majority of Batstow Village was completely destroyed. It was an unmitigated disaster. People were crushed instantly, or buried alive in their homes, in their workshops. Every attempt was made to rescue those who were trapped, but it didn't matter. The amount of earth that was displaced by the explosions was too much for the remaining residents to handle. All they could do is listen out for the muffled cries of their loved ones, now buried deep beneath the earth. Of course, the people of Batstow knew exactly who was to blame for this. Allaire had been constantly blasting for years in their endless pursuit of success. In an attempt to maintain a somewhat amicable relationship between the settlements, Some of the folks from Allaire came to help with the rescue efforts, but they were thoroughly rejected. To the people of Batstow, the last time they were there, they were rude and uncaring, and even in this dire situation, did not want anything to do with the people that had brought them so much misery. Needless to say, that festering resentment was now growing into a bitter hatred. Sometime later, the small amount of people left in Batstow, the widows, the orphans, they decided they wanted the people of Allaire to feel the same pain they did on that fateful day. So they waited until sundown, just as the railroad workers returned to their homes, tired and aching from their day of hard labour. The people of Batstow, who were no strangers to explosives themselves, caused an explosive chain reaction in the train yard in the centre of Allaire village. The explosion was incredibly destructive, and the resulting fires burned high. Unlike Batstow, Allaire village was not situated close to a lake. There was no escaping this inferno, and there was no fighting it either. Not only did it destroy the train yard and the homes surrounding it, it also made the entire area undesirable to the railroad company. The people of Allaire didn't just mourn the passing of their loved ones that night. They mourned the loss of their reason for living. The goal they had been striving so hard to achieve was turned to ash in a matter of minutes. This feud had cut deep, and both communities were decimated for it. Nowadays, these ghost towns stand as an eerie reminder of that time in American history. Some say the spirits of those lost on both sides still hold sway as you explore these villages, that the hatred they bore for each other has turned into a bloodlust from beyond the grave, with sightings of ancient tools and farm equipment being flung at any outsider who dares to visit. Some say that if you look close enough, you will find clues in the geography around Batstow village for the parts of the settlement that have now been long buried, with the remains of the inhabitants still inside, the unlucky few who spent their final moments in horrific agony, crushed in the one place they thought was safe, never truly being laid to rest. Some say that the remains of Allaire are still warm to the touch, regardless of the time of year, as if they still burn with the same intensity of that fateful night when their friends and family, as well as their aspirations, were torn away from them. Some say that the one locomotive that survived the explosions and flames that engulfed Allaire village still sounds off in the dead of night, but its passengers are not bound for the Atlantic coast. Its passengers are headed for the next life. And some say that I just made that entire story up.